Hello and welcome back to the Lobo Designs channel. My name is Heather Lynn. I'm the owner of Lobo Designs, and I'm here today with my first ever Adobe Illustrator for iPad tutorial. And what I'm going to go over today is just the basics of the user interface, where the tools are located. I won't be diving into how the tools function, but I will let you know how they compare to the desktop version, just so you can get comfortable with it like I am. And then my following tutorials will show you how to dive into the tools, how they work, how to create projects and things like that. So let's get started. I'm going to start out by showing you exactly how to create a document. So when you see this screen, after you click on the AI for iPad icon, which looks like this down here at the bottom, you're going to tap on that once. You're going to get this screen, unless you already had a project open, in which case you will see the project. But to create a new artboard or document, you're going to click custom size here. And what I use is this screen size normally, so it's entirely up to you how you want to size this. For AI for iPad, I work with a screen size canvas, which is 2732 by 2048, I think. I don't remember that off the top of my head, but we can go into recents, and I think this one here, 2732 by 2048 pixels. So that's what I'm going to be using. You could also use the size of the sheet that you're going to be cutting on your laser if you're making laser design. So if you want to make a 12 by 20 inch artboard, again, entirely up to you. This is just going to be the size of the file that you're creating. So I'm going to use the screen size one. I'm just going to make sure that this is selected, and I'm going to go down here and I'm going to create file. This is what I'm going to see upon first load of the artboard. Zooming out, this is your artboard here. This outside area is not your artboard. So if you were to turn it on for a transparency grid, you can see here these lines here. You want to stay within these lines to make sure that you're staying within your Adobe Illustrator artboard when you're creating your designs. So I'm going to go back into preview mode. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start up here at the top left. I'm going to come all the way down this menu. I'm going to hop over to show you how this little guy works down here. And then I'm going to start down here at the bottom. I'll go all the way up and over. So some of these work with each other. I'll tie them in together where I can, but I'm just going to go in order down and then back up to make it easy. Starting up here at the top, this is what I'm going to call the selection tool. It works just like the selection tool in Adobe Illustrator for desktop. I believe it's called the Move tool on AI for iPad. Again, I'm learning with you, so if I don't get the names of the tools right, I'm probably most likely going to be using what I call them on desktop, because I've known desktop for way longer. So like I said, this is your selection tool. Right underneath of here is what I'm going to call your direct selection tool. And what's neat about the way that these work on the iPad version, I'm just going to quickly create a square so we can work with this. On the iPad version, if you have the selection tool highlighted, you can double tap on the object that you have highlighted for it to automatically go to the direct selection tool. So I really like that. So again, if you have this tool selected and you want to manually edit one of the points on this shape, you can double tap on this. It'll go over here, and then you can actually manually adjust this shape just like you would with the direct selection tool in the desktop version. So I really like that. So again, this is the selection tool. We'll say this is the direct selection tool. And this here is to add anchor points. So if I have this square here, and right now it has an anchor point here, 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 one in each corner. Say I wanted to give this a point, I can drop an anchor point right here in the center, anywhere that I want, and it'll create an extra anchor point there. And then I can actually go to this tool, double select this, get into the direct selection mode, and then I can edit just one point in this design to make it like a house shape. So that's how you would hop back and forth between the selection tool, the direct selection tool, and the pen tool, which we'll call, I believe this is the add anchor point tool or similar to it. So that's what I'm going to refer to that as. It doesn't have the little plus icon like it does on desktop, but it's working the same for me so far as I'm learning. Right underneath of that is the pencil tool. And if you hold down on the pencil tool, you'll find other tools inside of this sub menu, like the paintbrush. And the paintbrush you can actually change to dots, stitch, border, fold. I believe you can do that with the pencil tool as well. So if you wanted to have some sort of a pattern on the line that you're drawing, you can, let's go back in there. You can select one of these different options down here when you're drawing. So if you have the pencil tool selected, say we wanted to draw a stitch line, go back here. I'm just going to draw a line here. And if we zoom in, you can see, I'm going to zoom all the way in so you can see how the line that I just drew is in stitch shape. So that's pretty neat that you can change the style there. And again, what's neat about this is it works the same as desktop. So if you can see here, I'm zooming in as much as I can. If you can see there's a line here at the bottom, you would want to expand these. So what you can do is you can make sure that you have this object selected by going up here to the arrow, tapping on it, and then you can go over here into this menu and create a stroke outline. So then what it's going to do is it's going to actually individually outline all of those tiny strokes there, and you don't have to worry about the little strokes being ignored when you're laser cutting. So again, this is a little bit further into the demonstration as I'd like to go, but those are some easy things that you can do in the app that are very similar to how it works on the desktop version. I'm just gonna get this out of here. And while I'm in here, I'll show you how you can delete things and the menu that pops up with the selection. So while I'm over here, I'm in preview mode. Up here at the top right is how you switch back and forth between preview mode, outline mode, and your transparency grid. If you've seen my other tutorials, I use outline mode a lot, so I really love that that's in the application on iPad because it's very helpful, especially for laser cutting designs. So I'm going to keep it into preview mode. I'm going to make sure that I have this selected, and then I'm going to show you the menu that comes down here, which helps you actually adjust the object. So the first one on the left, and this is very small, so I apologize if you can't really see it, but the first one on the left is the opacity. You can drive whether or not you want the shape to be opaque or not, so like a transparency factor. The next one next to that is the stroke, so you can actually bump the stroke up if you want the stroke to be thicker or thinner. Again, this works just like desktop, so if you're adding a stroke to something, you will need to expand that stroke. Getting out of this, next to the stroke button here is the layers option where you can move the position of the object either forward or backwards on your artboard. So think about it as stacks, and sometimes you want one object to be on top of the other. So this will help you change the order of what's laying on top of each other. You would drive it forward with the slider if you want to bring it to the front. You would slide the slider all the way down to if you want to send it to the back. Next to that, this is the move arrow. You can have that selected so that you can move your object all the way around. This lock here will lock your object similar to how the desktop version works. If you don't want to edit an object and you want to work around it, you can lock the object to make sure that you don't accidentally select it. I haven't actually figured out what this little icon between the lock and the duplicate button is, but I'm looking into it. I will add that in the comments once I figure it out, just so that you have that documented. This plus sign here will duplicate your object, so it will make an exact replica of the object that you have selected right on top of it, kind of like a paste in front for the desktop version. And then this last icon here is the trash can, which is the delete function, which is what I'm going to do with this line since we don't need it anymore. So you just tap once to delete. And the hand gestures on AI for iPad are similar to the Procreate gesture. So you tap with 2 fingers to undo, you tap with 3 fingers to redo. So if you accidentally deleted something that you didn't want to delete, you can tap with 2 fingers to bring it back. If you want to send it away again, you can tap with 3 fingers and then you can redo that and get that out of there. So again, very similar to Procreate in that respect. Under here is the eraser tool. So this is the tool where if you have a shape on your artboard, let's grab this. I'm going to switch this around so that it's filled. You can select the eraser and you can draw a line through the eraser. And now these are 2 separate parts that you can do with what you will. So now I can select just this half and the eraser split it in 2. So again, works exactly like the desktop version. This is the shape tool. So now I'm going to get rid of this. Let's get rid of this. The shape tools are in here. Squares, so it's the rectangle tool, the ellipse tool, the polygon tool, the star tool, and then the line tool. Remember that these are all hidden inside of one menu. So if for some reason you think that your square tool went away or your rectangle tool went away, it's most likely just hidden in the sub menu. And these are very easy to use. You just tap on the square, you can draw a square, you tap on the circle, you can draw a circle. If you hold down this button here, it works like the shift key on your keyboard. So as you're drawing a shape, if you want it to be a perfect circle, you would hold that down. If you want it to be an oval, you would not hold that down. Same for the square tool. If you want it to be a rectangle, you would hold it. You wouldn't hold it. If you want it to be a square, you would hold it. I like how that works because that is the equivalent of a hotkey to me, so I really like that. The next one below that is the type tool. Inside the type tool is also the vertical type tool. So whether you want to type across in a horizontal line or if you want to type up and down, I'm going to get rid of this stuff on the artboard. Typing on the type tool here, I'll just show you what it looks like. The regular type tool will create just a regular text bar, and then the horizontal type tool will type it up and down. And you can double tap those and edit them. There's a keyboard right here so you can type whatever you want. There are little buttons here that will change the size of the text. There is a button here that will help you with the kerning between the letters if you wanted them to be spaced out more or wanted them to be more close together. There is a line spacing button if you had multiple lines and you wanted to control the space between the lines. And then you have cut, I believe copy, and paste is what this is. And then another delete if you want to get rid of it. So those are very easy to use. This right here is an artboard preset. I don't use this, but if you needed to create another artboard, this is how you would add that into your project, and you can control the size of it here if you'd like to. Right here is your import. So this is where you would import a photo or something that you wanted to use in your design that you had saved in your files. What you would do is you just tap on it once and it gives you an option to either take a photo with the camera, take a photo with the camera, use your photos upload. It times out if you take too long apparently. Files and Creative Cloud, and then your library. So you have a bunch of options there for uploading. Oh, now it wants to stay there. That's fun. And then underneath of there, this is your stroke and your fill. So if you have an object here and you have it set to black fill, no stroke, you can tap this button right here and you can swap it back and forth between the two. So black stroke, no fill, black fill, no stroke. And it'll also bring up the properties on this side for you to be able to control a little bit more with that, which is the shape, the width and height, the placement of it on your artboard. You can control the stroke of that shape too, the same way that you would control the line path that we just drew. So lots of options over here in the properties menu. I'm going to clear the artboard. Again, we went over this little button. It starts to behave like the shift key on your keyboard, which is super helpful when you're doing certain tools, so you don't have to worry about it. It also works as the shift key when you want to move objects. So if you can see, So if you can see, I'm going to select this. I'm going to see how I can move this everywhere on the artboard. If I hold this down, it's going to keep it in line. So if you want to move something straight across or straight up and down or in a diagonal pattern, this will help you snap to a certain grid versus not holding that down and being able to move it wherever you want to move it. Let's get rid of that. Now we're going to go up and down the right side. This bottom icon is a link and it is for linking objects. I do not use this, but if you are using links in your project, this is where you would use that. You can either relink, update the link, or you can embed. This up here is the repeat function. There are radials, grids, and mirror functions in here. There's also a blend feature that I don't use, but the radial, grid, and mirror are pretty cool. I'll show you how those work. You go into here. I'm going to create let's create a star. Just going to hold down the shift key so that it's the right size. And I'm going to make sure that it's set to black fill and that I'm in preview mode. So now I can move this over here. I'm going to show you how this works. In the repeat button, you can do a radial circle. So if I tap radial here, watch what happens. What it's going to do here is you can actually repeat the radius of the object that you just created to create fun patterns. So let me undo the last one that I did. And what I'll show you here is how to adjust the size of this so that you can see it a little bit better, that it is a whole bunch of stars all lined up. So you can create fun radial grids with this. Another thing that you can do with this tool, let's undo what I just had. Actually, let's get rid of this. I'll show you how to make a grid. So if I have this tool selected, I'm just going to make a square. And then watch what happens if I go into here and I select grid. it will turn it into an actual grid that I can use in my design. And if I drag either the bottom bar down or the sidebar down, it'll continue to repeat what it's doing for that grid size. So if I move this all the way over here, I can then take this and drag it out and actually make a grid shape. And then once you're done with that, remind yourself that you won't be able to see it correctly in outline mode because it's going to be expanded all the way out. So you just want to make sure that you go in here and you do expand so that the pattern itself expands and you don't have to worry about all the extra cropping that you'll do. And then these shapes over here, if there's anything hanging off the side, you can always crop them out by using one of the tools inside of the combine shapes menu, the exclude or the overlap. So that's also a fun tool that you can use when you're going through the grid function. And then the mirror function, let's get rid of this. Go back into preview mode. The mirror function is neat because I'm going to use the paintbrush tool. And I'm going to use the calligraphy brush, a flat one, I think. If you wanted to do, say, some kind of a flourish, like that, you can select this. You can go into the repeat function and you can click mirror and it'll create a mirror copy of exactly what you just drew on your artboard so that you have two exact copies for you to then move around if you need to. You can ungroup them, you can expand the shape because right now they're just gonna be lines. So you would go in and you would expand the shape on here and you can use those as ends of your text or some kind of flourish above and below a design that you're using. Really fun to use the mirror feature. You could also do a copy and paste and then flip it, but it's a lot easier to just do it as a mirror. This menu here is your path menu. So if you have a path on your screen, let's have it selected. Going into this one, you can cut the path, you can convert to corner, you can convert the curve, you can join the path, simplify the path. So simplifying path is super helpful when you have a lot of nodes in a design and you want to simplify the design so that it doesn't have a ton of anchor points. You just want to pay attention when you're simplifying paths because you want to make sure it doesn't warp your design or change the look of your design as it's removing extra anchor points. So these are all of the options inside the path menu that you can use when you have paths selected. I'm not going to run through every single one of these because I don't use a ton of them, but this is where you would find these functions if you use them on desktop. Just above that is the type function. This is neat because this is where you would convert your text to outline. So I'm going to go back into the type tool. I'm just going to tap once on my screen so I get a text box, make it a little bit bigger so we can see it. And then inside the type tool, let's close the properties menu so you don't see that. Inside the type tool here, you can outline your text. So you want to make all of the changes that you want to make to your text before you change this, because then you can't change any of those things about the text, like the spacing or anything like that. So outline text should always be your last step. So I'm going to jump ahead just a little bit and then we'll come back so I can show you how you would edit this text before you outlined it. So now that we have this selected, we're going to make sure that we have this selected here with this tool. You're going to go into properties, and this is where you can make all of your changes. So this is where you can change the sizing. You can change the angle of it if you want to rotate it. You can also use this bar up here at the top to rotate if you need to. So let me select that once more. That bar at the top will control the rotation. And again, shift key if you want to rotate it at a certain angle. I'm just going to undo that. You can change the font if you want to use a different font. You can also add your own font if you have a TTF or OTF file. Right here, you would just hit the plus sign and it'll walk you through the upload. It takes about maybe 30 seconds, if that. It's super easy. You can change the type of font if it has different options from regular, italic, bold, bolder, italic. This right here. You can change the scale of the text itself. You can also change the vertical scale if you want to warp it. Just be careful when you're making changes like this because as you can tell, you really are warping the text. You're not keeping it at scale. So the font is losing the original look, which usually isn't ideal. I'm going to undo that and get back out here. This is the control of the text like you can use in the desktop version. Again, the same as here. You're going to be able to make it smaller or larger. You're going to be able to space it out if you'd like to. These tools are super neat because you can actually, did you ever type out an entire thing and then decide that you want to have it in caps and you have to retype it? So you don't have to do that in here. You can actually select this and tap on this and it'll change the whole thing to caps for you. You can tap this one and it'll change the whole thing to caps, but it will make the first letter of each word larger so that it stands out. This one right here is an underline, and then this one right here is a strike through. And again, if you don't want to use those, you just unhighlight them after you click on them one time, and then you don't have to worry about it, and it'll convert right back to the original. If you are using these, again, like I said, once you make all of these changes, the color, the stroke, opacity again down here, all the things that we can control within this menu, alignment, once you're done making those changes, let me get out of here, you want to go. You can keep the properties menu open if you want to, or you can tap on it once to close it. You always want to go into the type menu here and click outline text. That way, when you go into your outline mode, you're now seeing the outline of the text that your laser will read when it's engraving or cutting. So you can use the type tool to type it out. You can use the properties up here to edit it. And then once you're done with your text, you want to go into the type tool and click outline text. Just above outline text is alignment. So it's pretty basic. You're going to be able to align top to bottom, center, horizontal, vertically. You can distribute them same way as desktop. Inside here is your edit menu. So you have cut, copy, paste. You can copy appearance and you can paste the appearance. This icon right here is what they're calling combine shapes. We know this to be the Pathfinder menu in desktop. So this is combine all, which is unite in the desktop version, minus front, which is also minus front in the desktop version. There are a couple extras. It doesn't have all of the options that we have in Pathfinder on the desktop version, but it does have the ones that we use the most. So that's pretty helpful. Getting out of this tool. And what I just noticed in these tools that I forgot to say is once you're in these menus, if you see this little arrow right here, you can click this and it'll just shrink it back a little bit so you see less of the descriptions. It gives you more space here and takes up less real estate on the right side. So if you want these readily available, you can just click the little arrow, and that way you don't have to see this giant menu that explains everything for you. Once you're familiar with the icons, you don't need this. You can just shrink it back, and then you just tap on the icon one more time to make it go away. Up here is sharing with other people, writing comments on the Adobe side of things in Creative Cloud. In here is precision. So this is where you can turn on your smart guides, which I love. You can snap to grid if you'd like to. Like I said, entirely up to you when you use these things. If you want it to snap to a grid, if you want it to show the grid in the background, you can just tap those. The rulers will also show here if you want to turn them on and off. Guides as well, same as desktop. Going out of this menu, up here, again, we're in the properties menu that we just went over. This will appear for shapes and for text so that you can edit it accordingly. Up top here are your layers. So this works exactly the same as the layers panel in desktop. This is layer 1. You can rename it. This is a create a layer, and you can click on it once and you can rename it. You can hold this down and drag it if you want one layer to be above another layer. So now layer 1's on top, layer 2's on the bottom. You can click and drag. This is lock your layer. This is don't show your layer. So you can always hide and unhide, lock and unlock if you want to use the layers here. Super easy, and like I said, exactly like desktop. Clicking once on this button will make it go away. And then I'm just going to quickly go across the top here. We've already touched base on this one, which is switching back between preview mode and outline mode. Outline mode is my favorite thing because of the fact that it shows you exactly what your laser is going to read. Going back into preview mode, get out of there. Settings. This is just the settings for your current document, what you're using right now for measurements, the color mode that you're in, and you can go into the app settings in here if you need to. This question mark up here is the help button. So you can browse the tutorials. It'll walk you through a tour of the app. The view gestures button and the touch shortcuts will show you exactly how to use the undo, redo, how to use the little button down here. The keyboard shortcuts you can tap on and it'll pop up here. This works if you have a keyboard attached to your iPad, and they are basically all the same shortcuts as you would know from the desktop version. Over here next to the question mark is publishing and exporting, so you can quickly export or you can export as a couple different versions. The best thing about this, as we all know, is that we can export as SVG, which is something that we cannot do from Procreate. Up here, this little icon, you can share a document. Again, this is something within Creative Cloud. And then next to here, this is your undo and redo. Again, 2-finger tap, 3-finger tap is easier, but if you wanted to use the buttons, that is where they are. That is the overview of AI for iPad. And I am so excited to start releasing tutorials that will be helpful to you and I, because I'm learning it just like you are. So I will see you soon back here on my channel for more AI for iPad overviews, but that concludes this tutorial. As always, feel free to join us in the Glowcreate group on Facebook for additional tips and tricks on how to use Procreate and Adobe Illustrator beyond the screen to turn your digital artwork into physical products. If you enjoyed this video and would like to be notified of future tutorials, please hit the like button and subscribe below. Until next time, this is Heather Lynn of Lobo Design signing off. I'll holla at you later.